Hello, third graders. I wanted to share another chapter with you from Leprechauns Don't Play Basketball by Debbie Dady and Marsha Thornton Jones. Today I will be reading chapter 10. Before we get started in chapter 10, let's recap chapter 9. There was a new character in this chapter, Principal Davis. He seemed kind of angry and strict because of the way that he was talking with Eddie when Eddie was in his office for the prank that he pulled with the bees. The summary of the chapter, we can use our somebody wanted but so then model. So previously in Leprechauns Don't Play Basketball, Eddie is concerned because he got in trouble for his bee prank. Eddie, Melody, Liza, and Howie are suspicious of Mr. O'Grady. They want to keep Mr. O'Grady from stealing the fairy stone from Mrs. Jeepers. They are pretty much convinced that he is a leprechaun, and so they have to figure out a way for Mr. O'Grady to look them in the eye. So Eddie comes up with a plan, and then the other kids agree to it. So let's think about what's going to happen in this next chapter. Chapter 10 is called Up to Their Eyeballs in Trouble. Now, I think that the eyeballs is related to the fact that Mr. O'Grady does not look anybody in the eye. So are the students going to get in trouble by trying to look Mr. O'Grady in the eye? Let's read to find out. Chapter 10, Up to Their Eyeballs in Trouble. The next morning, the four friends huddled under the oak tree. It has to be today, Howie insisted. Grandma said leprechauns can only leave the Emerald Isle for 3 days, and this is Mr. O'Grady's third day. Liza interrupted. Let's all just leave him alone and let him go back to Ireland. We can't, Melody explained. Mr. O'Grady is bound to make his move to steal the fairy stone today. We have to stop him before he has the chance, Howie added. Eddie nodded. I'll do it today during gym. What will we do until then? Liza asked. Just be normal, Eddie suggested as they went into the room. But Mrs. Jeepers was not her normal self. Her red hair hung limply around her face, and dark circles were underneath her dull green eyes. Her white blouse was wrinkled, and she wasn't wearing her bat bracelet. Even her green brooch seemed to have lost its shine, and she didn't smile, her odd little half smile, when she said, "Hello, children." The rest of the morning was strange too. Mrs. Jeepers jumped at every little noise, and her eyes kept darting toward the darkened hallway. Mrs. Jeepers seems nervous, Liza whispered. I think she's scared, Melody said softly. You'd be scared too, Howie added, if the future of the world was pinned to your shirt. Nobody said a word when Mrs. Jeepers forgot to give the spelling test. Eddie worried that she would forget about Jim, too. He almost wished she would, but at 10:30, Mrs. Jeepers sighed and slumped at her desk. Boys and girls, it is time for physical education. You may walk by yourselves to the gymnasium. I will come for you at the end of the class period. I'm looking at that picture of Mrs. Jeepers, and it does show her hair is falling limply, and her shirt is all wrinkled. She just looks very tired and frazzled. Then she put her head down on her desk and was quiet. I think she's sleeping, Melody said as they tiptoed out of the room. I don't like seeing Mrs. Jeepers this way, Liza said softly. I'd like it, Eddie admitted, if it wasn't so weird. Melody stopped at the gym door. I'm afraid to go inside. We have to, Eddie said. Howie nodded. Grandma said the way to capture a leprechaun is to stare at him without blinking. It's the only magic that controls him. Once Eddie has captured him, he'll have to do whatever we say. But what if you blink? Liza worried. I don't want to think about that, Eddie shuddered. But if you do outstare him, you can get his bag of jewels and make him leave, Howie pointed out. You're right. It's now or never. Eddie gulped and rubbed his eyes with his knuckles before he followed his friends into the gym. Mr. O'Grady was waiting on the other side of the gym by the record player. Eddie didn't waste any time. He marched right up to Mr. O'Grady and tugged on his red sleeve. There's something in my eye, Eddie whined. Mr. O'Grady turned away and laughed. To be sure, 'tis nothing but your eyeball. Ha ha, Eddie said without a smile. But I'm serious. It really hurts. You have to look at it. Mr. O'Grady shooed Eddie away. Don't be a troubling me. I have a dance to be a teachin'. Then he turned on the record player and started dancing to the Irish tune. Howie nudged Eddie in the back. Keep trying. Eddie stepped in front of Mr. O'Grady. I'll be your partner, he said, but Mr. O'Grady leapt away. Eddie spent the entire gym time chasing his teacher around the hopping third graders. Eddie was almost ready to give up when he ran smack dab into Mr. O'Grady as he was doing a twirl. You see Eddie's expression. He looks like he's up to no good. Eddie hopped up and tried to look into Mr. O'Grady's eyes, but Mr. O'Grady was not to be tricked. He reached into his little pouch and sidestepped Eddie. Watch out! Melody squealed. He has a magic stone! Eddie jumped back and joined his three friends. Why might you be a-thinking I have magic? Mr. O'Grady asked softly. We know who you are, Eddie blurted, and we know why you're here. We're going to stop you, Howie added. Mr. O'Grady pulled out the small red jewel from his pouch. 'Tis foolish to be a-thinking you can stop me. And that is the end of the chapter. So some interesting things. It seems now that because the kids have talked to Mr. O'Grady and he knows that they think he's magical, what he is going to be doing to keep them from getting the stones from him. Let's see what happens next chapter.